Let's find out more by going to the source and spending a few minutes with the high priest of the Church of Satan, Peter H. Gilmore. He's an author. He is the main administrator of the Church of Satan, appointed high priest back in, was it 2001? He's been all over the place. He's been interviewed on everything from History Channel, the BBC, Sci-Fi. He's been on Bob Larson's Christian radio show. He's a musician, a trained composer. He has a very colorful background, and he joins me on the show today. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, really a pleasure to be involved and an honor to be asked.
Is the Church of Satan pretty secretive? Do you guys mostly keep to yourselves? Is it a secretive organization? Do you guys play it pretty close to the vest?
Well, it depends on what it is about the organization that you're interested in. Our philosophy is quite open and easily obtainable. The literature has been out there ever since Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible in 1969. And our website, churchofsatan.com, is really quite full of material, so that everything that we're about is pretty much there for anybody who's curious to discover it. Now, we don't talk much about membership figures, and we don't reveal who's in the organization, because membership is completely and utterly confidential with us, which means that there are people who could have very high-profile public positions in the world who are affiliated, but they keep secret from everybody else who's even in the organization. The only people who would know would be my wife, who's the high priestess, and myself. I
came from the buckle of the Bible Belt, a corn-fed Midwestern kid raised in Christian school, okay? So when I'm in school, I'm in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and of course they're spilling all of this religious dogma into our brains. Anytime the phrase, the term, the name, the moniker, the Church of Satan came up, it was always, they worship the devil. And we freak out, oh my God, they worship Satan, which is common in the church. Don't bother to actually go any further and find out exactly what it is you guys are up to. But that's a common misnomer, right, that you guys actually worship an actual spirit, a supernatural entity named Satan or Beelzebub, right?
Yes, that's a complete misconception. Satanism starts with atheism. We believe that the universe is utterly indifferent to us, and that because we place ourselves as our highest value in our own self-created system of values, we consider ourselves our own gods. So at most we could say we're self-deifiers, and we reject the idea of anything supernatural. We don't believe in an afterlife. We don't believe in souls. We don't believe in demons or devils. Possession, of course, seems to be a psychological problem, not a supernatural one. And, of course, it doesn't stop people from writing us almost every day asking how they can sell their soul to become rich, famous, and have sex with whoever they want.
They're trying to cash in, huh?
Well, they're trying, but, they're perpetual losers, and they're going to stay that way, I'm sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the ritual, the tradition. Some people, you hear it every day, the accusation that it's theater, you guys are just being provocative, you're just trying to turn the screw. Why so much harsh symbolism? Why so much shocking tradition? Why do this over just being, say, an atheist or a humanist?
Well, in fact, we find that to be a lot of fun. Our creator, Anton LaVey, was a man who spent a good deal of his life in show business. He was in the carnival circuit. He did some circus work. He'd play calliope. He did lion taming. And all religion is showbiz to one extent or another, and we're about the only one that admits that. But we enjoy that. Metaphor and ritual is a hell of a good time. We think that actually a lot of folks who just want to be atheists and humanists get a little lost because they don't look at the human animal and really may see that these are aspects that are something that could be exercised to the benefit of the person rather than just be put aside. I remember that if you looked at American atheists under Madalyn Murray O'Hair, they were constantly trying to invent symbols for themselves and coming up with replacement rituals and such, because people kind of felt bereft, I think, not having anything that they could do that they could use to reinforce their own values. Ayn Rand talked about consciousness being conceptual and that you'd create metaphors out of a lot of percepts, you'd build up larger concepts, and that kind of idea that a symbol brings together so many different concepts all at one time. Symbolism is very powerful for the human animal. So we employ that, and we think we do it in a way that's a lot of fun for people who have our kind of aesthetic. And we don't feel that it's something that everybody should be interested in. We tend to be kind of Halloween-y sort of folk. And again, it's a good time for us, and that's really the best aspect of it. But outraging people is fun, too. All these stuck-up religious folk who feel that they have the answer and that they're running around talking about some kind of great spiritual awakening after death. We just like to dump cold water on that and shock them and shake them up because, they're complacent. They think that they really do run the world. And we're showing them that there are other points of view and they can be dramatic and fun and engaging.
I'm talking here with Peter H. Gilmore, the high priest of the Church of Satan. When I was in the church, I noticed that a lot of the churches would attract regular people, and they would also attract a lot of people who were just seeking attention. Do you find that the nature of the Church of Satan, you tend to attract a lot of people who are sort of rapping on your doors, who want to join up, who are simply looking to be provocative? They want to be able to tell people. People say, where do you go to church? And they could, of course, reply, I'm a member of the Church of Satan. Do you find people who are kind of the thrill seekers who want to be a part of that, and what do you do with them?
Well, it's kind of interesting. We really don't get a lot of those kind of people. I think most folks who are thrill seekers and want attention can find plenty of ways of getting it on their own without having to say they're part of the Church of Satan. Because if they're in the Church of Satan, that kind of bad guy badge may not get them where they want to go. It could only really be a very brief thrill that could then backfire and not get them the kind of strokes that they're looking for. Most people want a good guy badge. They want to be seen as somebody to be emulated and honored and held up for esteem by the mass of society. What we do get, though, is that since people misinterpret what we're about, that we get the folks who are often the detritus coming to us, the losers who are saying, I want to sell my soul. I want, Satan to make my life better because my life is crap. And being the Church of Satan, we can say, buzz off. We have no interest in you. This is an organization that tells you that you have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You're entirely responsible for all of your actions, that your success and failure in life is on your shoulders, and you can't blame it on anybody else if you're a failure, and you don't need to tell anybody else that they're responsible for it if you do well. And that's a big challenge, and very few people are willing to live up to that, we've found. So it ends up being a wonderful filter when they really find out what we're about, that we're not here to embrace them in some kind of dark brotherhood and spirit them off, in a limousine with, naked prostitutes to give them fun. Our attitude is that if your life is not wonderful, then it's your own fault, and get off your ass and make it good.
Does the Church of Satan have sins? I mean, there's a lot of... I don't want to say, is it hedonistic? It's, if it feels good, do it. If it tastes good, drink it, kind of, there's a lot of that going on. But is there a moral code that you guys follow?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, we would not say we're hedonistic. We're actually Epicurean, because hedonism implies uncontrolled, rampant, just going wherever you need to go. And that kind of being out of control of your life is something that Satanists oppose. We really feel that we have to be masters of ourselves, and that includes all the pleasures that we're going to be seeking. And the pleasures are one's choices. I think some people think, well, if it's hedonist, then you have to be involved in orgies and gluttony and all these crazy things, and then push yourself in areas that you don't want to go. And the whole point is, for Satanism, since it's a philosophy of individualism, that it's your own choice. You have to decide what's good for you in your life. Now, we do have sins, but our idea of sins, they're behaviors that we want to limit, to get out of our lives. They're things that we find negative, things that we might do. And since we're always about trying to improve ourselves and be the best ourselves that we can be, the satanic sins are a little more interesting than most religions, because they're not something that some god is telling you not to do. These are things that we tell ourselves, hey, we don't really want these to be part of our lives. And the number one satanic sin is stupidity. And we really don't want to behave like idiots. If you're ignorant, of course, you can always ameliorate that by doing some research. But we kind of find that our society thrives on stupidity these days, that everybody's out there trying to take advantage of folks just being a bunch of dumb sheep. And we oppose that for ourselves. I mean, if other people are stupid sheep and folks want to take advantage of them, fine. It's not our business to save them. We're not out here to save anybody. The second satanic sin is pretentiousness. And we find that if you're posturing, if you're a braggart, unless you can really deliver the goods, then shut up. We don't want to hear that nonsense. Be honest about what you actually can do. And we Satanists are really very strict self-critics. We try to find out what our talents are and develop them. And really, we are often quite ruthless with rejecting things that we do as not being good enough, and really trying to pull ourselves up and make ourselves productive. That's one of our values. A third sin is solipsism, and that's, for us, it's not the classic philosophical idea of solipsism. We sort of mean that it's the idea of projecting yourself and your values on others without really investigating what they're about. And that's dangerous, because if you think other people have the same kind of values that you do and you find out that they don't, which they, generally speaking, often wouldn't, you could really run afoul of being taken advantage of. Self-deceit is another one of our sins, and we really think that you shouldn't fool yourselves. You really have to be honest about yourself. The self is our deity, so no self-deceit here. The next one will be herd conformity. And for the Satanists, that means just following along with what everybody else is doing just because they're doing it. And we think, again, that's sheep-like behavior. That's a form of stupidity, but in a social manner. And we would not want to do that. I mean, you could go along with what other people are doing if you can find a specific advantage to it for you. Like, hey, there's a great device out there. Like, say, the iPhone 5 is a wonderful phone. A lot of people are buying it. You could buy it. That's not herd conformity. That's just finding something that's valuable. And if everybody else went along with that because it is a good thing for you, then that's fine. But don't simply go along with things that might be against your values just because everybody else is doing it. We also think that lack of perspective is something that we consider a bad behavior. And that would mean lack of perspective and context for almost any kind of action in your life. We really feel as Satanists that it's kind of our responsibility to understand a bit of history and a great deal about human behavior so that we, again, can be effective in whatever we're approaching, whatever our goals are. And along those lines, the idea of forgetting about past orthodoxies we also consider a sin. Because when you watch trends that rise and fall in society, often in arts and literature and music, whenever something rises and then falls, then when it comes again, everybody acts, it's like the first time it's ever happened. And we think, well, just pay attention to what's gone on before you, and you won't be hoodwinked by somebody offering you really some kind of stale old thing in a new package. One of our major things that we want to avoid is counterproductive pride. Pride is good because we feel that we have to value ourselves first before we can value anything else. If you're your own God, you can then be a benevolent God and value other people and other things. But if you're too prideful, you're really throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And again, that can go back to the pretentiousness. Those kind of reflect on each other. They're behaviors that are tandem bad things that we try to avoid. And our last sin would be the lack of aesthetics. And Satanism, what makes us really more a religion than a philosophy, is that we do have an aesthetic sense, that we do have symbols and metaphors that we embrace and employ. And we feel that understanding the aesthetics of cultures, architectural, musical aesthetics, literary aesthetics, just the balance and structure of how anything is created, learning what principles are out there. The golden mean in architecture is a good one to even understand. The sense of proportion and balance. Being able to know that is, we think, an enriching thing. So as Satanists, we encourage having an aesthetic sense, and so we really denigrate the idea of people who actually have none whatsoever.
Talking here with Peter H. Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan. Now, I've had some fun with this. Obviously, in my own mind, I'm always conjuring, the organ. In fact, I saw some YouTube video of LaVey himself who's sitting in front of the organ, and he's totally playing it up, and the dark arts and the symbolism in it, and especially during this time of year. And as we approach the Halloween holiday, there are people in my former community, the Christian community and other faiths, who are going to be locking up their black cats and hiding their virgin daughters because they are convinced that members of your organization are going to go out and kidnap the animals and the children for sacrifice. And I want you to speak to this.
Sure. Well, first of all, we love animals because we feel humans are animals just like all of the rest. We don't make any distinction between humans and other animals. We feel kinship with them. Now, the idea of sacrificing, Anton LaVey addressed that really directly in his book, The Satanic Bible. And we always have to point out, it's right there at the top of page 89, and it says, under no circumstances would a Satanist sacrifice any animal or baby. It couldn't be clearer. And the whole point is, animals, we find, follow their natures. Humans are about the only animal that can contradict their own nature. So Satanists value animals. And children are a potential. They have a potential to be allowed to follow their nature as they grow, rather than have it stunted, as so often the Christians and other spiritual religions will do. The spiritual religions seem to feel that whatever you do naturally is something bad. And it's just this wonderful game and really con game that they do by saying anything that you feel that you want to do is evil. And since you're going to keep doing it because it's natural for you, and they say it's evil, you have to go to them for forgiveness if you want to get into their heaven. So they trap you all, anybody who believes in those spiritual religions, into being subject to bowing down and asking forgiveness and being transformed so they can reach this mythical heaven that they keep trying to offer you.
So the bleeding of your blood into a cup and drinking it, does that kind of stuff exist?
No, we're actually not interested in that kind of unhealthy behavior.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of offshoots. And as I was preparing the show, I received correspondence from a number of different, do I call them splinters? Do I call them copycats? And they are a little darker, or they do something different, or they condone violence, or who knows. What is the official Church of Satan stance on all of these other organizations that sort of borrow from your name?
Well, we consider them pseudo-Satanists because most of those people are essentially devil worshippers. They do believe in the Christian God, and they do believe in the Christian devil, and they've decided to opt to worship the loser in that mythology. And we think it's foolish to believe in either of those mythical figures. Theism is to us a poison. It's an evil. It's something that has caused grief for as long as human history has been recorded. And those folks, if they're claiming they're the Church of Satan, they're liars. And since we actually have trademarked our organizations, various aspects of it, they could be legally sued for that. I really haven't seen anybody else claiming to be us or use our names, but there's a lot of crap on the internet where there's these nutty devil-worshipping types. And actually, I think for the most part, it's like a handful of kids or just idiots with a website. They're looking for attention, and they get it because they say all these things. But if you look at them, they're probably living in their mom's basement, going to a job, if they even have a job, that's really low level, that they're probably close to being fired from. Yeah. They're again, like societal rejects and losers, and this is their way of trying to get people to pay attention to them. Folks like that are generally really of no consequence unless they're the type who are inclined to actual criminal activity. And since the Church of Satan's philosophy is one of law and order and supporting the idea of a social contract, we do not look well upon people who do criminal acts and think they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
For you, Satan epitomizes the pleasures of the flesh, the enjoyments that religion would normally forbid. Satan is sort of your way of tweaking the church, right?
That's close. But Satan more to us is an inspirational figure, like he was to Mark Twain or Byron or Milton, as a symbol of pride and individualism and liberty. We're not really using it just as a way of being negative and contrary to Christian or other spiritual religions. I mean, because we don't embrace any spiritual religion at all. We think they're all equally foolish. So for us, there's this great feeling of pride that we are individuals and that we can celebrate that.
Now, do you guys take a harder line than a lot? I mean, you don't believe in turning the other cheek?
No, not at all.
You don't put up with any shit. Is that what you're saying? I mean,
precisely. We don't think anybody should, really. How else should you live? I mean, should you be a sheep? Should you bow down? Like, we're against tyranny. We're against subservience. We're out there to try to promote the idea that people should be self-directed. But again, we understand that there's a range of abilities in the human species, and that it's not for everybody. Not everybody can form their own horizons, as Nietzsche would ask for the Superman to do. He only felt that a Superman could do that. We think that may be an exaggeration, but sometimes when you see the mass of people out there and how clone-like they behave, then perhaps he's right, that you really have to be a Superman to do that, and that the percentage of folks who can direct themselves is very small, a very tiny little capstone to a very big pyramid. But the funny thing, too, though, is that there was a point called the Satanic Panic from the late 80s through the 90s when evangelical Christians were putting up people who were claiming to have been part of some kind of diabolical organization that was doing just exactly what your church taught you, that there was babies being bred for sacrifice and animals being slaughtered, and that demons were teleporting people.
It was during that very time period as well. It was the mid to late 80s and early 90s, you betcha.
Yeah, and we call that the Satanic Panic. And it was really, if you've ever read Harold Brunvon's books about urban legends, all that kind of stuff was spread in the techniques he has basically described in his books about how urban legends begin and are promulgated. So Geraldo Rivera was actually probably the worst person responsible for keeping that nonsense going. And they were just crazy folks, even some who were part of law enforcement, who would go around saying, yes, this is indeed going on. And they'd often have books that they were trying to promote, or they'd be offering themselves as consultants to other law enforcement around the country, and they'd charge people a fortune. They go to, say, a small police department and say, I'm an expert in occult crime, and I'll charge you $300 a head for each of the officers in your local force. And then they bring in crap that they bought in some occult store and claim that it was at some scene of some murder, and it was all nonsense. And at that point, I was often doing television shows sitting alongside these people and exposing them for the liars and frauds that they are. And there'd be, of course, people in the audience who were religious going, well, I believe that. And I'd say, well, there's this book called The Satan Seller by this guy who claims to have been a drug addict, and he says that demons teleported him to places. And I said, you believe that nonsense? And they're like, yes, I do, because he's a good man. And I'm like thinking, well, then I have no hope to reach somebody like that. If people believe in irrationality, you really have no way to go to try to get them to deal with reality as it is. And I'm sure you feel the same way as an atheist, that when you talk to people and you try to bring up the mythology of their beliefs, or the very fact that their theism demands that they condemn huge swaths of the human species who aren't fellow believers, that they have to move away from that secularism would be a better way. But you can't really bash through that with some folks. They're a lost cause.
I have to bring to attention that Mike Warnke, the author of The Satan Seller, was exposed as a complete fraud. He had never spent any time as a Satanist high priest. He was never a drug user. He wasn't in the Vietnam War. He hadn't done any of the things that he said he was going to do, and he was exposed by someone inside the Christian faith, and it was a huge scandal at the time.
Yeah. I've got all those articles. It was wonderful.
just watching another domino fall, huh?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is he tried to be a Christian comedian after that and then offer marriage counseling, but since he had about 6 different marriages, he's really hardly the one to go to for advice, because it clearly wasn't working for him.
If we could put a big scarlet bow on everything, the Church of Satan is what?
Well, the Church of Satan is a religion and a philosophy that basically stands for the value of human individualism, pride, and liberty. That's our essence. And that we do it in a theatrical way because we have fun that way. Life should be fun. We think life is a great party. We'd like to be alive as long as possible. We like to explore the mysteries that are there. We don't lock ourselves off from thinking that we know everything already. We constantly question all things. And faith is not a part of Satanism. We reject faith as simply, again, being sheep-like behavior. So doubt is the tool that we use to question all things, and reason is the tool we use to explore whatever data we can amass to really come to understand our position in the universe, and generally enjoy every minute that we're alive if we can possibly do that.
And I'll bet you guys have one hell of a Halloween party.
Sure. Well, actually, most interesting is the highest holiday in Satanism is each Satanist's own birthday. That's how self-centered we are. But Halloween for us is a lot of fun. We tend to look and see that most people are trying to act like Satanists one night of the year, and that's the one. They want to reach down and sort of touch their dark side, or wear costumes that reveal parts of themselves that they've been repressing the other 364 days a year. But we give out candy. I have a big Victorian house in upstate New York, and it looks like the Addams Family house, and it's painted black with red and purple and copper trim details. And another friend of mine lives down the block and has what he calls the Halloween house, and it's sort of green and orange and black, and he has sort of Halloween decor up year long, very spooky stuff. So we give out candy to the kids. There's not a lot of people who do that anymore. Of course, the kids with costumes get more, and the kids with spooky costumes get the best candy of all. We've had strolling violinists going back and forth between the houses dressed in tie and tails, playing sort of classical music that is spooky. We had somebody who's an extraordinary mute clown that would chase people around, because just about everybody is terrified of clowns. And we have a lot of fun. It's really a great deal of fun. And after the children and the candy is over with, we'll go inside and generally imbibe wonderful spirits and have carefully crafted cocktails with homemade ingredients and a lot of conviviality with intelligent and wonderful people. And we think that's a great way to spend that evening.
The Church of Satan makes more sense than the Christian church that I was raised in. I mean, if I believed in hell, it would be frozen. Fantastic. Peter H. Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan, I hope you and yours have a happy Halloween.
And you too, Seth, have an absolutely thrilling Halloween, and the rest of the year may it bring you an abundance of pleasure and joy.
Thank you very, very much. There are a lot of parallels to atheism, non-theism, you know? I mean, we don't have the theater. I don't think we're as married to the self.
Yeah, thank you.
619, you're on the Thinking Atheist radio podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Zach Black. How you doing?
What's going on, Zach? What's your perspective on the Church of Satan?
Well, I think I have a unique perspective because I was a member of the Church of Satan from 1994 till 2010 when I resigned. So I had some questions for Gilmore, but since he's gone, I just wanted to state a few criticisms against the Church of Satan.
Yeah, we'll make them rhetorical questions. Go ahead. Hit me.
Okay, cool. One, the Church of Satan is basically a defunct organization. And as you mentioned, I heard you mention that their website looks like it was written on Windows 98. Well, that's pretty much when the Church of Satan died, was with Anton LaVey. And, I got nothing against Peter Gilmore, but if truth be known, Peter Gilmore is not handpicked by Anton LaVey to be the high priest of the Church of Satan. It was actually Boyd Rice. And Boyd Rice declined it, and Peter Gilmore was given the high priesthood of the Church of Satan by Anton LaVey's lover and inheritance of the Church of Satan, Blanche Barton, as a gesture of respect for his financial support when Anton LaVey died, and Gilmore helped support her to get back on her feet.
Hey, Zach, do you think that there's like a cult of personality thing going on? I mean, do you think the church really died when LaVey died because he was such a figurehead? He was sort of the franchise player. He was the face and the voice of the Church of Satan. Do you think his passing sort of spelled the death knell for it, or what?
Absolutely. LaVey was very charismatic, very intelligent man, and Peter Gilmore is kind of a shadow of that. Nothing against Gilmore, but I think what really killed the Church of Satan.
Pleasant guy. I thought he was a very if you were to tell me 10 years ago I'd be interviewing the high priest of the Church of Satan and I would have a good time. I would have, I'd be seeing how hard you were hitting the mescaline. I'd be like, what? Oh, are you kidding? But, I found the guy to be completely pleasant. I don't know anything about him or the organization outside of that conversation. But I did have the thought that I still, at this moment here in 2012, think of LaVey when I think of the Church of Satan. And I wonder if LaVey being gone has really sort of diminished the overall presence of the organization.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The LaVey died in 97, and the first few years after 97, there was an administrative thumb wrestling match to try to restructure the hierarchy of the Church of Satan. And what really killed the Church of Satan, though, wasn't Peter Gilmore. It was the Internet, because the majority of people who were joining the Church of Satan before the Internet were to meet like-minded individuals. And when the Internet came along, no longer is it necessary to spend $200 on a membership fee to meet like-minded individuals. You can just log on to this side or that side,
What were you like in the church? Did you participate in ritual? Did you have the sword? Did you have the naked woman on the altar? Did you have the organ music? And did you participate in the theatrics?
Actually, that's kind of a misconception. There are very few people that actually participate and have what they call now, it wasn't called this back then, but they call now active membership.
Dude, you're killing me.
An active member.
You're stealing my joy here. I have a mental image of the Church of Satan, and there's Gothic temples and huge pipe organs and virgins, and you're killing me now. You're sucking it all. You're saying it's sort of benign and dull in the big picture?
Yes. I mean, they do that for theatrics and when they're on, media. But if you want to talk about gothic black rooms and rituals, I did in my youth paint my room black and hang Baphomets and upside down crosses and had sex with many goth women. But that's never part of the Church of Satan. That was just my own.
Save that one for the autobiography, my friend. You bet.
Right.
So you left. Why'd you wait so long to walk? If LaVey died in '97, you left the church in 2010. Did I hear that right? Why wait?
The reason why I waited was just because, well, first of all, I'll have to say that when I did join the Church of Satan, they sent me a 50-question psychological questionnaire ranging all kinds of questions from, like, what's your favorite color to, if you have 3 wishes, what would they be? Describe Satan to you, yada, yada. Fill that out and mail the pictures. They asked for pictures of yourself, and then they mailed something back and said, you look like you can articulate the tenets and foundations and philosophy of Satanism well, so if you would like further involvement, please send a VHS copy. This is before CD and DVD and all that stuff. I'm kind of old, And I was delivering pizzas when I was 18, so I didn't have, money to spend on $1,000 camcorder, whatever.
What they want to tape of you? What are you do? It's sounds like an old dating site. I mean, are you having to do an audition, an interview on tape for these guys?
Basically, yes. And I said thank you, but no thank you. And I actually did talk to Peter Gilmore, once through snail mail. When the Anton LaVey died, I had a subscription to a publication called The Cloven Hoof and the Black Flame that Gilmore at the time he was the administrator for. And I never received my copies, and I wrote him a letter, and he basically told me in a polite way to, go F off. So that was my last communication with Gilmore. Granted, this was a long time ago. Maybe his attitude's a little different now, but
yeah.
But no, there was no real active involvement. Like, there was a handful of people that gravitated around Mr. Gilmore, and what I want to make clear here is that the majority of Satanists are not members of the Church of Satan. Granted, there are Satanists in the Church of Satan, but the majority are not the Church of Satan. And the Church of Satan wants you to believe that you can only be a member of or you can only be a real Satanist. And they stress that, real Satanist, if you pay the $200 membership fee and you get your little fancy red card.
So are all these offshoots just, come on, are they just kids in their basement trying to be cool? Are they attention getters? Are they legitimate organizations? Probably all the above,
majority, right? Yeah, all the above. Satanism is not a religion, it's a philosophy, and I don't think the word church should have anything to do in the same sentence or paragraph with the term Satan. Satan is nothing but the adversary, and Satanism is the adversary. Ism is being put into action, okay? And there are people capitalizing on this. There are death metal fans that dress like Marilyn Manson and piss off their parents, You have, just like Christians. You look at Christianity. Jim Jones, the mass murderer, he considered himself a Christian. And he was, I think, a he had some sort of title in the church, but he ended up killing 90 people or whatever, or however many people. That doesn't necessarily reflect on all of Christianity, just like Satanism. There are kooks, there are cool people. It's just a cornucopia of nuttiness.
I get the vibe they just attract some of the more theatrical, some of the more flamboyant, some of the people who they have the kind of personality where they want their lives to have more, for lack of a better word, theater in it, and they choose this way of expressing their own lack of a belief in a deity and more of a personal responsibility to, as Peter said himself, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and own it. Do you think that's close?
I do think that's close, and it's been a very common criticism against Satanists. Satanists are nothing but atheists, in Halloween costumes.
That's a great line. That's a great line.
I wish I could have coined that, but I didn't. I didn't say that. But no, that's a very common criticism.
In Halloween costumes. Yeah. Well, they've certainly given us some good discussion. Anything else before I move on?
No, that's good. I'm glad that Peter Gilmore came out of his hole and decided to do an interview and actually do something for once. But yeah, I've enjoyed listening.
All right, thanks for the call. I do appreciate it. Man, anybody else feel the temperature in the room drop about 20 degrees right there? Ooh, man, anybody else chilly? It's interesting what he said about having to record a video audition and send it into the Church of Satan. I just picture that you get sort of your membership packet in the mail. You know, oh, look, honey, you got a package in from the Church of Satan. And you open it up, and, there's the upside-down cross in it and some hand-carved devil horns and some death metal on vinyl and a little handy Beelzebub patch you can sew on your shoulder and just